When you think about grief, it's a natural response to think about people or pets you have lost. But there are so many other situations that leave us grieving. In today's podcast, we are talking about hidden grief and have invited professional coach Maya Rooz to tell us all about it.
You're listening to the Declutter Hub podcast, bringing you tried and tested, no-nonsense tips and advice from the leading experts in decluttering and organising your home. Now here's your host, Ingrid Jansen.
Hello and welcome, listeners. I'm Ingrid. If you're new to the Declutter Hub podcast, you're so welcome. What you'll find is that we try and find the fun factor in the serious business of decluttering. And if you've been here for a while, you know exactly what we mean. So thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get involved in conversations related to this podcast, it all takes place in our free Facebook group. So come and join our lovely, warm and supportive community. Go to declutterhub.com/group to find out more. Well, hello and welcome, Maya. What a treat to have you as a guest on today's podcast. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Hi, Ingrid.
We have known each other several years now, haven't we? I mean, we first met at the ABDO conference. And for anybody who doesn't know what ABDO is, it's the Association of Professional Declutterers and Organizers. We met at a conference. You did a topic about hidden grief, and I can honestly say, blown away by the topic and about your expertise. And I came up to you afterwards and I was like, we need to talk. You need to come onto the podcast at some point. And here you are, finally.
Oh, I know. It's a pleasure to be here. Absolutely. And yes, I can't believe this was almost 2 years ago now. So hidden grief is still a topic, definitely. And we waited a long time, but now we're here and we're doing this.
Exactly. So how do you know so much about hidden grief? How has this happened? Because it's not something that kind of comes up and goes, okay, I know. What happened in your life that you know about this topic?
Well, it started first, I didn't know it was hidden grief that I noticed it back then, but it started with already a second client of mine when I went into their home and I realized that organizing is not all about, it's not just about the stuff. Actually, it's not at all about the stuff. Then I went into coaching and I went through this big program and continued my organizing on the side as well. And it wasn't until I was invited by an author of a hidden grief book who invited me on her podcast to talk about how hidden grief shows up as clutter. And that opened my eyes in that podcast because obviously preparing for it led me to think. And then I thought, it was with that client and with that client. And then I discovered it in my own life. I completely transitioned careers about 5 years ago. I spent 15 years in the automotive industry, in the corporate world. And then during COVID, I pivoted, reinvented myself, probably is a better word, and became a professional organizer. Then it started with coaching, speaking, all the above. And I just realized that, in my wardrobe, I found items that were reminding me of my old work, my old career. And every time I would open my wardrobe, I would realize that there is a past life in there, and it always felt like I had nothing to wear, but I was no longer going to the office every day. And then I realized that even though leaving that industry was my decision, I felt such grief about it, but I felt such grief about this whole situation. And I couldn't call it grief. I didn't know it was grief. And it wasn't until after I spoke to this author that I realized this is hidden grief. And then it snowballed from there. I just started seeing it everywhere. Every following client I went to, if there was a specific thing in their home, I could recognize hidden grief. And then coaching helped me how to show up for those clients and actually make sure that I can help them in a proper way.
Okay. So, so in your case, hidden grief really started with seeing the clothes of a previous career in your wardrobe. So, when you started exploring hidden grief, what other things did you see? What is hidden grief? Do we have a definition of hidden grief? And can you give me some examples?
Yes, certainly. So, hidden grief, which is also called disenfranchised grief, is grief that is not openly acknowledged, it's not socially recognized. And
Mm-hmm.
I think downplayed would be the best term to use for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's grief that is downplayed because it is not necessarily just the death of a loved one, which is what we commonly refer to as grief. It's miscarriage, infertility, divorce, loss of a career. It can be any of these things. Empty nesters, children leaving home that can leave us grieving, leave parents grieving. So it's everything and anything that doesn't culturally count as grief in our society.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting you say that because I definitely had the empty nester syndrome last year when my son left for university. And I always thought I was going to be one of those moms who was going to be like, I'm just going to make, I'm going to, I've raised them to be independent and they're going to be fine. And I'm going to, I love it that he goes to uni. And the whole year before he left, I was really emotional, really dreading it, crying. And I know people who know me know that I cry all the time, but it was even worse than normal. And it was just that sadness of him leaving. And it's not because I didn't want him to go, because I wanted him to go. I think it was just, it makes me emotional thinking about it. I think it was the fact that your family will never be the same. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why this is definitely, it counts as hidden grief because nobody would recognize this as Ingrid is grieving, and it's so personal and it's so
Yeah.
intimate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. Oh, I'm sorry, listeners. That doesn't happen very often. I cry on the podcast. But it was hard. It was hard. And I think somebody can be a bit light, like lighthearted about it and go, oh, he's just going off to uni, he's fine. And I always thought that way myself. So when it hit me, I was so surprised by it. And so like it came out of the blue, honestly, that I thought, wow. Um, I did not expect, I did not see this coming. And it took me a while to get used to the fact. And I'm super happy for him. He's doing super well. I'm of course I miss him. And when he gets back, he comes in and the whole place is turned upside down within 5 minutes when they're home. But you miss that family setup that was just so special. And I think I can really now resonate with this hidden grief that while I never did before, actually. So I think maybe sometimes when you've got lived experience, it changes everything, doesn't it? How you feel about it and how you can understand it and how you can um, understand somebody else if you've been there yourself. And it doesn't mean you can't show up for other people if they're struggling with something. If you can't just go. But I think I've got an understanding now that I never had before.
Mm. It gives you a next level of empathy for sure.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, for
And
sure.
as I go through this topic on various podcasts and various, settings, I also always learn something new because I also
Yeah,
go through life and I also have stages of things that happen, and it just always there's always another aspect of it and another angle to it, which
yeah,
which I really love. It's really beautiful in a way.
yeah. I think so too. Well, listeners, I'm gonna be honest with you. I took a break for a minute because it suddenly hit home that actually my empty nest syndrome was hidden grief. And I hadn't really realized that, I think, before recording this podcast. But I have regrouped. I am ready to continue talking about this conversation. The lovely Maya is still here with us. So, Maya, you've talked about all the different ways that hidden grief can show up. But how do you see that then with people when you're working in people's homes? How does it represent in clutter?
So the first thing that I will come back to is in the wardrobe. So you can see it in people's wardrobes. You can see so many signs of hidden grief, like with the career transitions, or if you see, let's say, moms who have a lot of maternity wear, but they don't plan on having any more children, but that's still
Mm-hmm.
grieving that stage, that beautiful stage of their lives. It shows up very often in our garages with hobbies that we no longer pursue or aspirational clutter, the things
Mm-hmm.
we hoped we would do, but we never did, we never got
Mm-hmm.
around to. It shows up in lofts and basements as clutter, items belonging to previous partners, it or pets that have passed.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously we have a lot of that. Empty nesters, so things intact rooms, children's rooms, either
Yeah.
teenagers, they're just as they were when the children left. And this is not an issue unless it becomes a problem for your everyday life and or it stops you from fulfilling a different potential. If
Mm-hmm.
you have several rooms that are still your children's rooms, but you could create a whole new purpose for those rooms, then it becomes clutter. It's not always. These things are not necessarily always clutter. They're clutter if it's
Mm-hmm.
an issue for you, if it causes a problem in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think one which is also very, very interesting is when you have a loved one who is in a care home, in a long-term care. That's also a really special one because that person is still alive, but let's say they struggle with dementia, you've kind of lost the person, but yet they're still there and you still have all their stuff. It's a really, really tough one. That's a
Yeah.
really tough one. And
Yeah.
even, and I have had some cases of this where people transition from one gender to another. What do you do with your old self? Or
Yeah.
if it's a child, what do you do? You used to have a child of a certain gender. So there are so many ways. And again, it is not always clutter. It's clutter if it becomes a problem for you
Yeah.
in your space.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think these things can really hold people back of where they are currently and where they want to go, right? But they don't see that. They just see it as an overwhelming task to do something and to let go of something and to honestly, I think, ask themselves, but what do I want now and in the future? And if the clutter is holding you back, you're holding yourself back. And that is such a waste of potential or however a waste of a life.
Absolutely. We do tend to, if you think about it, and I just published an article recently on this, we tend to live in the past in our homes. We build, we spend, we invest, we purchase, and we buy items that build a certain life. But
Hmm.
then we've spent the money and we get stuck in that old life, and it
Hmm.
stops us and holds us back from becoming someone else, becoming better, growing. It's a tricky one. And then when it comes to the grief itself, as we know very often with grief, with normal grief, I'm going to call it normal, but with actually the natural grief when you lose a loved one, there is this tendency to distract yourself, right? We end up
Hmm.
not dealing with it. A lot of people end up
Yeah.
not dealing with it. This happened to me when I lost my father about 8 years ago. I buried myself into work thinking
Hmm.
that that would be a way out. It wasn't.
Hmm.
Um, but when you distract yourself from dealing with the clutter in your home, you're losing a whole, um, you're losing so much potential, so much
Yeah.
space in your home that you could be repurposing. It's really deep.
Yeah. 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 And I think people understand. I'm so glad we're talking about this topic, Maya, because I think people understand grief when a loved one passes away. I think people, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we did a podcast with Kevin from Pet Dignity Cram, and we talked a lot about grief from losing a pet. And I think that is, people can kind of understand that as well. But all the things we're talking about now, I think are really not really discussed. I mean, and maybe empty nest syndrome gets jokingly about like, oh, she's one of those moms that, can't let her kid go. But a lot of the things, examples that you've given are not really talked about yet, right? And that's why I think I'm so grateful that we're talking about this because I, just like you, have seen this all in clients' houses, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we both know that it's never about the stuff, it's about the emotions that sit behind it. You know, why do I see a lot of families that still have all of the baby stuff into the loft. And I'm like, what's the plan? Are you going to have another? Oh, no, 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 we're not going to have any more children. And I'm like, but just so you have to kind of unpeel that and talk about that and go, but what are you going to do with all this stuff? Because stuff is not meant to be stuck in a box or in a basement or attic or loft somewhere. It's meant to be used and loved. And it doesn't mean you can't keep anything that is sentimental. But when you see it all, especially with, like as you said, maternity clothes, I see that a lot as well. Like you are not planning to have another baby. You look amazing. Why is there still all these maternity clothes in there that make you maybe, not look your best, right?
Mm.
But I think it's that yearning to a time that they probably loved and that they miss, and they love being pregnant. They loved having a little baby. And yeah, it's trying to get your head around that yourself. And I think once you start to declutter with clients, you don't see that on the first sessions. That comes later when you start to know them, when you start to talk with them. And yeah, and then these things come up, right?
And for me, Ingrid, this is my favorite part about what I do. This is why I do what I do. It's not about
Mm,
helping people just get rid of the stuff. I've now started becoming very picky with clients, and I don't like to work with people who declutter only to replace it 2 weeks ago with new things. Um, I believe it's so important to be that safe space for the client, to be
hmm
so present and create so much trust that you can recognize these things, not just from the stuff, but from what your clients are telling you, how they're showing up. That helps them let go as well.
hmm
When you
Yeah,
truly hear them, when there is no judgment, when there
yeah,
is no, I mean, we all carry biases. We all have our own beliefs, our own cultural norms, our own assumptions. We bring that as organizers or as friends of
yeah,
those people. It's not just about an organ. Every time you go to someone's home, you make your own impressions, right, of what you see. You, if you see someone with hidden grief and you recognize that these people need so much love and understanding and yeah, just no judgment. That's the
yeah,
hardest part. Curiosity, acknowledgement.
yeah, yeah. Let's go for a break and let's chat some more after break on how do you deal with it? How do you deal with it? So let's take a break and we'll see you soon. Hello, listeners. Welcome back. Gosh, if you're listening to this podcast and think, wow, I can imagine you might need to take a break after listening to this podcast. You might want to re-listen to it again and kind of let it all sink in because it might be something that you've never even thought about before. So we've been talking about all different kinds of ways that hidden grief can happen, that we see the clutter fallout from that hidden grief. Um, but Maya, how do people do this, right? Because our listeners might not be able to have a professional organizer in their houses. They might have to do this by themselves. They might even be blown away by the fact this is actually something they've never realized this before. So what do people do?
Okay, let's dive into that. So first of all, you might be listening and going, "Oh, that's me. I have that. I have hidden grief for whatever reason." Um, or you can say, "Oh, that's my sister," or "That's my mom, that's my husband." It
Yeah.
can happen in so first thing to know is how you can help yourself. We always start with ourselves. I would say definitely we'll come to how you can help other people. But when it comes to yourself and noticing that you have hidden grief in your space, self-acknowledgement and self-compassion is absolutely critical.
Mhm.
First step is always awareness, right? Maybe this podcast has gotten you to get to that point where you say, "Oh, yeah, I have something." Awareness is first step. Second step is the self-love, self-acknowledgement, self-compassion that you haven't heard about this perhaps before, you haven't thought about this before. And then the following is either you start tackling it slowly yourself in very small doses. I'm a true believer in small steps, and I'm not a type of person who goes cold turkey on anything. And when I work in my own home with my own children or with my clients, I always break everything down into tiny, tiny, manageable steps so that change is almost undetectable. And especially with some topics as serious as this, you cannot go, oh, right, well, I guess I'm just going to go and throw out everything from the garage. It doesn't work like that. And no one, I believe, should make us think that this is doable. For some people, this causes serious, as you know, probably, I'm sure you know, getting rid of clutter can cause physical pain. So we have to go gentle with ourselves. When it comes to other people, so you recognize someone in your community, in your family, in your home who is struggling with this, it's good to notice so that you can step away and remove the judgment part and become curious. You listen to them different. You just see them differently and you see their stuff differently. I would definitely say don't try to control anything in their space. Don't try to fix it for them. Be there and inspire. I think inspiration is always, and modeling. We always talk about, raising children, about how modeling behaviors is the way to go. And I think in this case, it's the same. Modeling behavior. Always start with your own space first. Deal with your own clutter first before you help someone else. And having said that, we cannot always help either. And I think
Mhm.
recognizing when to to ask for help or to help people realize that they might need help, that's a very important one as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I think so too. And I think that's why sometimes then people end up calling a professional organizer, or if they feel that they're very alone, they end up in our membership because they want to be part of a community of other people who also understand that it's not as simple as just put something in a bin bag and throw it away, but that there's lots of reasons why the clutter is there. There's trauma, there are emotions, and I think you want to feel that people want to belong, right? They want to be part of something. And in my one-to-one work with clients that I still, do a little bit, I can still help on the ground. But of course, in our membership, we do this online. And we help, Leslie and I help our members with our information in our courses, with the opportunity to ask questions, but also that our members can share their stories in our forum, and we then answer and give tips and advice. But the fellow members are also amazing and supportive, and we see it all the time, like, I'm so glad I'm not the only one, right? And that I feel heard and I feel listened to and I feel understood. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? And I think when you see someone in your surroundings who you see is struggling, it's sometimes hard, because it's hard to talk about grief. It's hard to talk about hard things.
Yeah.
But I think when you want to reach out and give that helping hand to somebody and listen. Sometimes people don't want advice. They just want to be listened to and they want to be heard.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. I mean, everyone wants to feel heard and seen. That's one of the basic human needs. And
Yeah.
we as organizers, I know sometimes we go into homes and we are ready for action, but deep down, we are empathetic, we listen, we're there, we're 100% present, we don't judge, and we're curious. And that's what you can do to help someone in your community if you're not an organizer, but you help someone, you have someone
Hmm.
who you can help.
Yeah. So if I go back to it a little bit, so when your father passed away and you kind of buried yourself in work, what was the thing that changed it for you? Was it suddenly the realization that you were doing this? Were other people like, what's going on, Maya? So how did you deal with it? Because of course it's a long time ago now. Hindsight is a beautiful thing, isn't it? When I know now what I knew back then, but you make the best decisions as you can. So how did you deal with it?
For me, it was actually quite cold turkey. I ended up in hospital with a full-blown burnout and
Oh, oh my gosh.
yeah, so I had no other, I think this was a really good wake-up call. I
Mm,
really buried myself into work. I hadn't done any work on grief. I didn't know this was the first close person I had lost. For me, that part didn't show up as clutter. It was on the contrary, as I was recovering from my burnout, I was notoriously just decluttering. That was my therapy. I actually even volunteered to declutter in a school, and that's how I actually even started my business. My actual business came out as my recovery from my burnout. Um,
hmm.
but yeah, so for me, it was a very, very fast wake-up call.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything changed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Everything changed. And I think that's why you understand it so well as well, because you've been there and you probably it's on your once you know it, you start to see it come up everywhere, right? So if people are listening to this and thinking, okay, I recognize this, oh yeah, this is something that I had never realized before. I agree with you. I think it's very important to take it slowly, take it surely. If you maybe realize that you've got, a whole garage full of hobbies, of stuff that you maybe can't do anymore or don't or are not interested anymore, we're not, Lamaya and I are not saying, right, garage is next project and just chuck everything out. We know you need to build up your decluttering. You need to start slowly but surely. You need to start in easier rooms. You need to build up your decluttering muscle over time until you feel ready. And feeling ready does not mean you then have to go cold turkey and throw everything away either. It means, right, I feel ready now. It's the same when you deal with clothing from a person who's passed away. You don't have to go, right, I'm going to clear out the whole wardrobe now and everything is gone. You can just start with, okay, I'm just going to start with some socks and some underwear or something like that. And, or maybe the suits because I never liked him in a suit or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Or, oh, the ties he never wore anyway because we haven't been really wearing ties in work. So the ties are easier. Well, maybe for another person, the ties are the hardest things to do. So you have to really kind of gently ease yourself in, right?
Absolutely. I mean, change is not easy, right? As we know, it's not just about decluttering. Any change is difficult. Our brains do not like change, whether good or bad. Um, when you start, when you have the awareness and you decide, you need to come to a point and to a mindset where it's enough and you
Yeah.
want to start somewhere. And then when you go slowly and you go easy on yourself, you need that self-love and you need that self-acknowledgement that you are doing this, you are taking it slowly. It didn't take a weekend to get all that stuff into your home. You cannot
Mhm.
expect to miraculously make it all disappear instantly.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Oh my gosh. Anything else you would like to share with our listeners, Maya?
Yes, I think it's very important that we recognize that sometimes we are not the right people to help someone.
Mm,
And I speak now as an organizer as well. So, for any organizers listening, I think it's a very ethical thing to do to recognize if you cannot help a client.
mhm,
Sometimes we have people who genuinely could do with some therapy to see what's behind the clutter, and there are professionals who can help with that. The best thing we can sometimes do for our clients as organizers is to walk away, and in a nice way. I mean it in the nicest possible way, but to acknowledge that we cannot help them. We learn this as organizers. It's part of the ABDO code of ethics as well, as is with coaching as well. I cannot help all my clients. I'm not an expert on lots of things, and I need to be able to say, I have someone who would be better in this situation for you.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's really true. And I think because professional organizers are such helpful people, right? And we know that getting a grip on the clutter can move somebody so in such a positive way, but we don't want to force a situation either. We need to realize when a client needs more help, because we are as a professional organizer, most of us are not trained psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, coaches. There are other people who specialize in that. We just know a lot about clutter and decluttering and organization and storage and all of those things. But you have to indeed know and to be able to say to a client, okay, I've listened to you. I love to help you, but I also think you need other help besides me, or maybe you need to do some work in that first, and then when you're ready, I'll come back. But because we're such helpful people, it's sometimes we can sometimes see it, but the clients sometimes, it's how do you bring that message to others as well, that they really need to go to their doctor and talk to somebody about this, because this is so hard.
Yeah, but also equally, you cannot make a grown-up do something. So if
Yeah,
you're not if you are an organizer, or if you're just a listener on the client side, and you see someone, I think it's very healthy to detach from that in a certain way and acknowledge that you cannot help someone who does not want or need help. You can only do
yeah,
so much. You can inspire them and model it, but
yeah,
don't get too attached by trying to help them, because it's
yeah.
not good for you, actually.
Yeah, exactly. It's that fine line, isn't it? It's that fine line and that balance um, on how to, you know, uh, be around family and friends and other people, and where what do you do and when do you stop and when do you see and when do you say something, when do you don't. It's that's it. And with grief, it's tricky because I think people find it hard. If somebody passes away, it's hard to say the right thing and to know what the right thing is, even then. So if it's hidden, you might not even realize. So it can be a situation that you think, why is this happening? Just can't put my finger on it and I don't know what to do. But I hope that this conversation has opened up people's minds to other ways, and that there's more to grief than just people and pets, and that we need to be understanding. And I really, really hope that this podcast episode will do that for many, many of our listeners. So thank you, Maya, for being a guest on our show and sharing your knowledge with us. If people want to know more, where can they find information about you, or where, if you got a website or anything like that? Can you share it with us?
Yes, so my website, mayarooz.com. I can also be found on LinkedIn, on Instagram as the Life Curator. And I would definitely also recommend, so the author who interviewed me and started this journey for me is Katie Russler, and her book is A New Face of Grief. So I would definitely also recommend, if people would like to look more into the hidden grief in more depth, then that's what I would recommend.
Okay, thank you so much. We will definitely put your website in the show notes, so do check them out if you like to find out more about Maya. And I'm sure her website will give you all of the links to Instagram and LinkedIn as well. Listeners, what has resonated with you today? What steps can you take? Have you realized that you might have hidden grief, and how are you going to deal with this? Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here, Maya. And we will see you next week.
Thanks so much for listening to the Declutter Hub podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us in your podcast player so you don't miss an episode, and we'll see you next week.